Welcome to our first table talk with Jackie Grier from Mindset Practice. Hi, Jackie, how are you?
Hi, Sejal. I'm really good today. Thank you. Feeling excited to be with you this morning.
Hi, Jackie. Good to see you.
Hi, Deborah. Nice to see you.
We're really excited too. It's our first table talk following sort of the launch of introducing Table Talk a couple of weeks ago. And the idea behind this is really to talk to individuals from, organizations, companies, whether they're CEOs, senior leaders, employees within organizations or, motivational speakers, really to get their thoughts and views and just really provide insight to, everyone out there at the moment. And one of the topics, the topic for today is how to create a mindset of growth culture, which is something that you're very much involved in through Mindset Practice. One of the posts I put up today on LinkedIn is about culture and how culture is very important, in executing strategy within organizations. When we talk about organizational culture and mindset, what do we mean by growth mindset or mindset of growth versus survival in your view?
Okay, so I'm going to share with you a slide to help us understand this. So I'll just bring this up now. So you should be able to see this. Okay, so what do we mean by a mindset of growth versus survival in relation to culture? So okay, this is our growth transition curve, which was a transition curve that we developed through COVID-19, which was obviously a time of enormous change and a challenge to many organizations' culture. There are lots of change curves out there, so this is our version of that. And this is really based around the principle that, change is a process, but the transition of going through change is an emotional and a psychological experience. And so therefore culture for me is very much linked to how individuals, teams and the collectives in the organization are feeling and behaving in that environment, which then creates the culture. So if we're not feeling okay, so if we're feeling in that initial crisis phase, like we're looking here, so COVID hit, everybody was quite surprised, I think, by it, even though there was a lot of stuff in the media and it felt like it was coming. Maybe a little bit curious, what's it going to be like? How's it going to be in this situation? And then there was a lot of shock, I think, and disbelief as we went into lockdown. So I know us as a people development business, we had a diary full of events and workshops face-to-face, which just pinged out of the diary overnight. So it was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? So that the impact on us was really felt quite shocking. And then there was a little, well, it'll be fine, it'll only be short term. And then disbelief as we actually realized that it was going to be a longer term situation. So that I guess, experience, that crisis phase can cause people to then go into survival. So what we mean by survival is that at some level, I'm not feeling okay. So whether I'm not feeling okay about myself, so I'm doubting myself or my capabilities or my competence, or I'm not feeling okay about you and how we're working or trusting the environment or the culture maybe. So thinking about individual people in organizations, am I trusting the leaders above me that are creating the culture around me? Do I feel safe and able to be open with them about how I'm feeling? Because when I'm in survival, I'm probably feeling quite anxious and scared, probably quite powerless. Maybe I've gone into blame, judgment, either on myself or others, could be anger. And I could feel like, well, I just can't do anything. What can I do? And then as we begin to move towards growth, so as we become more aware of how we're feeling, we then have a choice about what we do. So we might end up in that adaptability phase, which is much more around, okay, so this is a pretty tricky situation right now. There's some acceptance here. What can we do? Can we be creative? Can we start to have a culture of innovation and agility? some of the attributes that we've looked at over the last few months that leaders and organisations need is very much to be innovative. The ones that will thrive coming out of this are the ones that are able to be innovative, bringing their people with them in that process, being agile, being adaptable, being open and honest too, and connected with people they're working with, so that eventually we end up in that growth phase where we feel much more determined and happy and positive, but also a whole range of negative emotions as well. So if I think about myself the last few months, I've certainly gone on a roller coaster of a ride of emotions as we've gone through this COVID situation. And that's really, you know, what we mean by moving from survival to growth. So if you look at that in, oops, sorry, that's come from another slide presentation. So if we look at that in, you know, expression really of what we actually mean by survival and growth. So as I've said, when I'm in survival, I'm defensive. I'm using behaviours that help me feel okay. So maybe I'm ignoring actually my emotions and the sense of loss or despair that I feel. And I've gone into a busy and getting everything done. I'm emotionally detached. Or I'm overwhelmed because I'm now working at home and I've got the kids and I've got my husband who's been furloughed and threat of losing his job, and I'm trying to do all my working day in 2 hours. Or maybe I'm blaming other people and the government or the people around me, so I'm feeling quite disempowered. Or I'm staying in what I know, so I'm not going to move to that adaptability phase because I'm going to stay in what I know and what I feel safe with. So if we're thinking about culture and growing a culture, we're not going to get that creativity and innovation when people stay in their comfort zone.
I think a lot of people at this time, Jackie, will be looking for that comfort.
Yeah.
And tend to kind of stay there longer because, you know, that comfort blanket is something that, you know, keeps them, they feel safe.
Absolutely. And that's what survival does. So the key here is it's not a right or a wrong. So we all go into survival probably many times in a day, sometimes minutes in and out. The key is becoming more aware of how I move between survival and growth and what habits and patterns might be driving that. So I know that I have a habit where I like to be competent, and I've had to work on that habit, that when I make a mistake or I don't get things right, actually it's okay. You know, I can still carry on and I don't need to beat myself up or be over critical myself. So I've understood that as a pattern that drives my behavior between survival and growth. It doesn't mean it doesn't still happen, but I can catch myself. I've learned to pick up the signals and the triggers. And that's really the key to a mindset of growth, is learning your triggers, learning the signals when you're moving between the two, and then ultimately choosing to spend more time in growth. And we'll come to that later.
So Jackie, how does mindset affect feelings and vice versa?
Yeah, really good question, Deborah. So this is our model of emotional intelligence, the mindset practice of emotional intelligence. And what you'll see is that mindset sits very much at the top of that. There are lots of models out there, lots of different models of emotional intelligence. This is ours because we believe that mindset is fundamental to how I show up. So how I feel and then ultimately what I do. So what you'll see is there's two sides to the model. So my personal growth habits and my interpersonal growth habits, and mindset, self-belief and belief in others sitting at the top. So self-belief is fundamentally, do I value and like myself regardless of what I do? Am I okay with myself even if I make a mistake? Am I okay if, you know, things go wrong when I'm trying to do something well for my business? Am I okay with myself and with other people even if I don't agree with them? Can I have an open, collaborative conversation with them? And therefore then how do I feel about that? So what are my feelings, being present with myself and then the feelings of others, and then ultimately what do I do about it? So what you can see when we're in growth, we're in a mindset of growth, is our puzzle pieces are all connected and they're flowing. We've got resources to draw on, we're agile, we're adaptive, we're probably more in that innovation space that we talked about. We're able to step out of our comfort zone and see options for doing things differently. But what happens when our mindset goes more towards survival? So So looking at this puzzle piece, this person here maybe feels that they are less competent than the other person or less significant than the other person. They become a bit more overwhelmed with their emotions and possibly with pleasing others too and the emotions of others, and therefore their effectiveness. In this puzzle, I would imagine that they're taking on a lot from other people and therefore not getting their own needs met. And what you can see is the puzzle pieces become disconnected and misaligned. So we're not in our flow. We're not able to adapt and be agile, and we can feel very overwhelmed with the situation, or numb even, blocked from our emotions. So that's very much how mindset can impact how we feel and ultimately what we do. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
So in terms of mindset, right, growth versus survival, we know what it is. You talked about the impact of that on feelings, and how people are also absorbing a lot of energy that's there, and how that can affect people's feelings and how they react to things as well. Now we're obviously in challenging times at the moment. People are going through challenging times professionally as well as personally. Jackie, there are people out there who have lost their jobs, businesses going into administration, people who are financially in difficult positions are having to, interview for the first time in, a number of years, pull together CVs, use social media as well. I mean, I personally have started using LinkedIn, which, I've not done before. And, these things can be quite daunting, very daunting. How do you suggest, or, what is it that you would say are the key things that people can do to help them move from that survival mindset to a growth mindset?
Right. Okay, great question. So the mindset practice of emotion intelligence really describes it all. So it's a practice, it's a verb, it's a doing. So nothing will ever change if I don't, consciously make a choice to do something different. So there's usually always something that we can do, even if it's a tiny step. Mm-hmm. And often it's the tiniest steps that make the biggest difference. Now we have a model to help people create those tiny steps called our practices for growth. And this is making that development of those new habits very practical and very applied. So thinking about taking it back to work, you're influencing climate and culture. It's about being able to use this back at work and at home to really start building that mindset of growth. So the first point is to be curious about what's my mindset and intention. So am I in survival or growth? I think the biggest thing for me, seeing things on LinkedIn and in the press and stuff, is it's okay to not be okay. This is a really, unprecedented time, and there's some very difficult stuff going on. And the more we can be real with each other about where we are, particularly in the work, the working environment, the more we're likely to be able to adapt and build that trust and that openness to able to operate as an organization or a team. So being curious about where my mindset and intention is, what do I want to get out of it? Am I just trying to get the better of you, to have the last word, or do I really want to have the best solution for the organization, for the team? So being curious to start with. Secondly, being present. So how do I feel? What am I noticing about my emotions and my feelings? Am I using them as data, as a resource? We often get trained, if you like, through our life, and particularly at work, that emotions, don't fit in the workplace, but we leak. They come out of us. If I'm angry, I've probably got some clenched fist, or I'm gripping my pen, and you're going to know full well that I'm angry. And I can use that as a signal too. So I can get quite fidgety if I'm in survival and I tap my pen, or I get really, really fast when I'm talking. Yeah. So starting to pay attention to those signals can help us pick up whether we're in survival or growth. But in order to do that, we need to slow down a little bit. And the pace of work, moving from one meeting to the next, not creating any breaks in our day, doesn't enable us to be present. So being present is really key. and then being choiceful. So what can I do? What one small thing would make a difference right now? Could I take a breath before I respond? Could I make sure that I have 30 minutes exercise a day, because I know that makes me feel better and more able to perform? Could I make sure that I have some time for myself every night, or have some time every 90 minutes, perhaps get up and walk around and away from my computer? Could I be open actually with my boss and say, do you know what? I'm really quite nervous right now about where we're going, my position. Or could I be open with my partner and say, I'm worried, you know, I'm worried about my job, or I've just lost my job. What's going to happen to our mortgage and our kids? So really creating more of that climate of openness and helping us all to feel psychologically safe. So be curious, be present, be choiceful. One of those will resonate with people as we're talking. And my advice would be, pick one small thing and start doing that every day and see what difference it makes.
I mean, what you've just said, all of that resonates with me. I mean, I come from a public sector background. You know, I've worked not only in the public sector, but also, you know, in private organisations as well as not-for-profit, all very performance driven because of the nature of the services. I set myself expectations, and culturally, right, the organisation had also set itself and you know, the people of the organisation expectations in terms of, you know, delivering, you know, not only to KPIs, etc., but, you know, working practices in particular. And, you know, I had to learn to slow down. You know, I started doing exactly what you said, you know, being choiceful. I started thinking about how I was feeling, and I also told myself, started telling myself, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And it was only then that, you know, things started changing for me personally.
Yeah.
You know, and I was more mindful, right, of, you know, not only my actions, but my people, you know, my family, you know, and ensured that, you know, whatever I was doing was more meaningful. And it had such a great impact on my, you know, well-being and my health as well. So, you know, totally resonate with everything that you said, you know, and I think it's important that, you know, it doesn't matter what level you're at, because I've worked in senior level positions, you know, everyone at every level from the top down to the bottom up needs to, you know, take a step back, reflect, you know, think about, you know, how you're feeling, and you know, how others are feeling as well, checking in with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so powerful. That's something actually we learn through you know, yourself, and, you know, the program that we did a number of years ago. But it's such a powerful thing, you know, and people are taken aback at first because they're not expecting you to ask them, how are you feeling, you know, and we don't tend to ask not only our colleagues, but we don't tend to ask, you know, our family members or your, you know, children. You know, you tend to kind of just shoot into things, don't you?
Because we go into the doing, not the being, don't we?
Exactly.
It's so important.
Yeah.
I mean,
very important.
You've perfectly described, you know, all the personal things individuals can do, but how can business leaders and employers create the right environment and, you know, for a mindset of growth, and how can they really work and let their employees harness that mindset?
Well, there are many ways, I guess, you know, they can do it, obviously starting with themselves personally, you know, exploring some of the material. You know, we have lots of resources that can be drawn on. We have some great virtual solutions which have come out of creation and innovation through COVID-19. So our virtual mindset to growth is a great leadership program, and all our materials are online, so, you know, leaders can access themselves. And of course, organizations, we're talking to organizations about how they then roll that out, using great practitioners that we have at Mindset Practice, like yourselves, who use the material and take the word, work with teams and leaders. And it starts at the top. So it starts at the top. So you have that culture, and then it's about the climate that this creates. So as a leader, what's the atmosphere, the weather that you bring into the room? Do I have a weather of growth, so sunshine and a cool breeze and a refreshing atmosphere, or is it oppressive and thunderous and limited, more like a survival climate? So what's the climate that as leaders we create, and using some of this material and actually I think bringing people in, whether it's virtually or face to face, to help you really unpick and embed some of that, creating that space. So often it's about, by doing some solution, it's about giving yourselves permission as an organization to slow down, use some resources that you can draw on, some great people to highlight some things to help you, build that climate, that psychologically safe climate for people to show up more from growth. Because it can be a quite scary place. Yeah. If the organization's in survival, it can take a lot of courage to go, excuse me, actually, I don't think that's right, or, I'm not okay. And sometimes that starts with the leader. So
it's important for the leader and the business leaders and the organizations to recognize the type of organizational energy or what the culture is. And I think, in the same way you check in with yourself as an individual periodically, as an organization, it would be beneficial for them to check in and see where they are, because they could be going through a particular change curve. There could be a merger, there could be mass redundancies, there could be, win a contract, for example. There are so many things that can affect individuals and as a whole, the whole organizational culture.
Yeah. And I think the thing that really is powerful about this approach is that it creates a common language. So people understand survival and growth very quickly. It's beautiful in its simplicity, actually, and its practicality. So, when great consultants like yourselves come out and use it and work with teams, it gives them that common language to talk about, to really help them explore and understand and find out what they need and what might need to change in their organization.
Yeah, it's so important that, when organizations are looking at, as you say, in particular during these times, changing or diversifying or, doing things differently, that they take people along with them, because that's what's going to help them execute their strategy, or whatever it is that they're looking to put in place successfully. Without their people, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. And it's so important that, they form a positive culture, for the organisation, and set the tone at the top, lead by example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie, for your time today. It's been great speaking with you, and, about such an important topic, in particular, in current times, tools and techniques, hopefully people can apply personally as well as professionally. And, we look forward to catching up with you soon and working together in the future to help the country, organisations develop a mindset of growth.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you very much for asking me. Pleasure.